All right. So, welcome to MVP Office Hours. I'm Jared Kingston. I'm a consultant for Aperio and MVP. Kind of help organize the U.S.-based office hours. For those that don't know, we also have one over in that's based out of India that our friend Shiv leads, who's on the call. And then we also have a Spanish-speaking office hours. So definitely spreading the love around there. So just a tidbit, if you're new to the office hours, really it's answers but live. So we have a couple different ways where you can ask questions. You can obviously speak up through the audio if we were not having any questions come in. Or you can post in the chat and we'll just get to it as soon as we can. If you're wanting to do the audio, just raise your hand in the meeting and I'll call on you as soon as we can there. So because it's open, we just ask that everybody mutes their line if they're not speaking. That way it's easy to hear questions and answers. With that said, we have a good host of MVPs on the line. So if I could have them raise their hand, I can pick most of you out, but just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Raise your hand in the meeting there. But some good hosts of MVPs. So MVPs, if you could just kind of state your name and who you work for and your area of expertise. So we'll just start here at the top with Mr. Kwong. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sir. Sorry, Jared. I had my microphone on mute. Don't forget to unmute your microphone either when you talk. My name is Brian Kwong. I'm the head of delivery and operations at Veta Force Solutions. I'm primarily an admin, but I also dabble a lot in Visualforce and Apex. But my newfound love is Process Builder and Flow.
Awesome. All right. And Deepa.
Hi, this is Deepa Patel with Hollick Consulting, and we're a small consulting firm helping small to medium-sized businesses with Salesforce implementation. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm also a user group leader for the East Bay user group, and I run the Salesforce certification study group on the Success community.
Awesome. Marty.
Thanks, Jared. This is Marty Chang with Solemn Consulting, and I specialize in Salesforce custom app development and system integration.
All right. Shiv.
Hi, I'm Shiv with Groupon. I'm a Salesforce and Force.com MVP. I help run the APAC and EMEA MVP office hours, and also run a couple of user groups and developer groups.
Awesome. Looks like we have, Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Steve Moe, and I'm Batman.
Yeah, Mr. Jack Walter.
Is that your new nickname now? Are you no more Charlie?
I did tell somebody posted a question the other day, and I did say that I looked up in the sky and saw the bat signal, so I...
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for being on, Steve. And then we have a couple other MVPs. Jackie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Sorry, it took me a minute to log on. This is Jackie Travieso. I am a two-time MVP and former co-leader of the Tampa user group. Moved to South Carolina near Charlotte, so if anybody's in the area and wants to get together or grab some coffee or something, I'd love to meet you.
Awesome. And what's your area of expertise, Jackie?
I mostly focus on the Sales Cloud.
Okay, perfect.
I'm an independent contractor as well, but my expertise or area of comfort is in the Sales Cloud.
Perfect. Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Mark Ross, MVP and working for Cox Automotive, otherwise known as Auto Trader.
And your area of expertise?
My area expertise is mostly around Flow and all sorts of automation.
Awesome. All right, so lots of great resources for us on the call today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Who wants to kick us off with the first question? Don't be shy. All right, Squire, you're quick on the gun there.
Want to give everybody a chance. I tend to eat up all of your time. So first question is really just kind of an experience-based question from the group. I've been asked to develop a solution to allow Salesforce One users to send contact info, a Salesforce contact, to a non-Salesforce email address. And I've come up with a couple ways to accomplish this, but I don't know if maybe there's a best case scenario. In my mind, I feel like there should just be an action button that just requests an email, action button on a contact, requests the outbound email, and then it just generates the outbound message either via a task and a notification, or maybe a trigger that just compiles the email, potentially uses a template. I'm not really sure. There's 100 ways to do it. So I'm looking for feedback as what maybe the best option would be. It's all about speed and ease of use from the Salesforce One app.
Any of the MVPs want to take that one?
Well, if you're going for speed, the fastest way is probably going to be using the publisher action, Squire, like you think.
Okay. And then do you think it should create like a task and then an outbound message, or fire a trigger, or what? Again, I'm just asking for an opinion.
I would say it's probably going to depend on what your use case is going to be.
It is really as generic as I just explained, is that we're trying to improve adoption. The significant base of our users are resistant to use Salesforce One for whatever reason, and the big one is because when they want to, or the big complaint is that when they want to send one of their contacts to another person outside of our org, if they're using their email client or Outlook, they can really easily send that card to just send it off. But from Salesforce One, they have to find it, then copy it, then paste it somewhere else, and that is the complaint. So I'm thinking, well, if I can get them to get into Salesforce One to begin with, they find that contact they care about, the quickest way to deliver said contact to a non-Salesforce user would be click an action and send it. But do you think what solution off the top of your head do you think is probably the best to deliver that?
There's two methods of doing it. It kind of depends on what type of bloat you want.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for a purely in clicks, not code type of solution, you could create a related object onto your contact. And so your publish action, all it's doing is creating a record.
Right.
And whenever a record gets created, that kicks off a workflow rule to send out an email or an outbound message with workflow rules.
Sure. So let the object pull the contact info down and then just have a field that says, and who's the recipient email, and just jam it all together. Okay.
So that's probably like the quickest, dirtiest way with clicks, not code. If you wanted to be a little bit more finessed than that, or you have some more logic that you need to send, or you want to do it more than what you can do with an email template or an outbound message, then you're probably going to go to the route of having to write Visualforce to create a custom publisher action, and at that point you might as well do everything in Apex.
Right.
So, from what you sound, it's tough to really know which ways would be best for you.
Mm-hmm.
If it was me, I would probably go the clicks part first.
I
the
like
proof of
clicks
concept
too,
to see if it would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any suggestion or hesitation to not use a task to do that same accomplishment without actually building another object?
The only hesitation I would do on tasks is you would have to put the unless it's static, you're going to have to put the email address someplace that you're referencing for the workflow row.
Yeah, and I might be okay with that. From financial side, they like to be able to track everything that happens, and so if I saw a record that basically said this contact was sent on this date to this email by this person, if that were all real visible, I think there'd be smiles rather than frowns.
Okay.
So I'm okay with that, but it's nothing about tasks per se that made you not suggest that.
Not for this, because you're not going to be doing anything funky with the related to of the task. I mean, the thing that usually makes me hesitate with tasks is they're special because they have those 2 polymorphic IDs on them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got an email field on that task that's being populated when the person's doing the publisher action, I think you should be okay.
Okay. But that's the path I was headed, and then I just was thinking that maybe it wasn't the best case scenario for the publisher itself. So I thought I'd throw it out there. Thanks. And yes, I'll demo it if I can get it to work, Brian.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
I might chime in. If my one suggestion would be whatever it takes to get it as simple and clean as possible. Whatever you can do to reduce the amount of input a client has to make, the amount of clicks, the amount of anything, even if that takes Apex, sometimes that's going to be well worth it. It depends on your users, but that's what really wows users, is when you can just have it be smarter, have it work harder with them having to click less.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, we got a question here from Joanne. Joanne, what's your question?
Sorry, I had a little momentary panic there about my mute button. So I'm having an issue with picking up or setting an ID via a URL. I'm passing 2 IDs, 2 record IDs over via a URL into a Visualforce page, but I'm getting it's coming back with a null object error, and I am just not seeing why. And so I'm hoping you might have some direction or some places I could check. I've tried it both as it's the field, the IDs I'm passing are values of lookup on a lookup field. And what the use case is I've got a list of leads that have a lookup field where assigned to a record, and I need to mass transfer that assigned to field to another record. And I'm trying to provide an interface using a wrapper for people to be able to get a list of what's assigned to the original record, and then, select, all or a few of those records and transfer them to the new ID.
Joanne, this is Marty. I think it's going to be really hard to try to troubleshoot that over a phone call, because typically if you're getting a null object error, I would say you should check your Apex debug logs if you haven't turned that on already, so that you can pinpoint the exact line in your code where the error is being thrown, and hopefully that'll give you a starting point to trace back what exactly is causing the error.
Okay.
It could be that's such a generic error. The cause is definitely going to be something unique to your code.
It makes me do.
But the debug log should at least give you the exact class and the exact line number, and that's usually a pretty good place to start.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to add to that, this is Shiv. You can also try, probably the parameter that you're passing is the ID, and you're receiving it as an ID, but the URL parameter is supposed to string. So try this method where it says Apex pages dot get parameters, and try to get it from there and see if it's still null. I think you should still get it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Awesome, thanks guys. Ashley, Arnold has a question. What can we help you with, Ashley? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi there. Hey, I was just wondering if you were able to add activities of tasks or events into an opportunity using the data loader.
Okay, what was the question again?
I was wanting to take an Excel file of activities and upload it to attach to an opportunity using the data loader.
So here's the thing. If you want to preserve the created, yes, you can insert. You have to make sure that you have the correct who ID and what ID where the who ID is for which contact that task belongs to or activity belongs to, what ID is which account or opportunity that belongs to. But if you import it without the preserved date permission, which you have to call Salesforce support to turn that feature on, they'll turn it on either for a week or a month, no more than that. This is not a regular thing. You can't do this on a regular basis, but they turn on the feature to preserve the create date, and then you can import those activities. And then when you have that feature turned on, when you're doing the mapping, you'll be able to map the start date and the end date and the times. But they don't do it all the time. So if you import it once and then a week later you say, I want it again, at some point they'll be like, sorry, you can't do this anymore. So you have to make sure that you do that. Now, if this is going to be an ongoing thing, I might look at products like dbAmp or Jitterbit or any of those to see if you can design actually an integration from a third party. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes, I believe so. So the preserve date is meaning so then you could date track to, the phone call was last week. Use this date instead of today's date, do you mean?
So let me ask you a question. Is this like sales reps activity?
Yeah, we're trying to use it from our corporate departments that don't really use Salesforce, but we wanted to capture their conversations. And
so why are they not using Salesforce?
Just because we haven't really designed Salesforce to be used by all the corporate office, only certain departments.
All right, so here's what I'm going to encourage you to do, because you're going to pay a lot more money in developing an interface to bring data from Excel spreadsheet than actually purchasing a license for Salesforce, giving it to the corporate guys and having them use it.
No one wants to do manual data entry, so everyone thinks it's easier if you do data uploads.
No.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's going to cost you a ton more. I guarantee you it's going to cost you a ton more to try and build an integration with using something like dbAmp itself. I think it's like, I don't even know what the cost is now, but it's like a ton of money a year, or even the Jitterbit programs that they have. It's a very expensive solution compared to getting a license and having those people put those. So they're calling on the same accounts that you guys are calling on?
Yeah, we kind of have a team, the strategy team, pricing team. They're all working on the same opportunities together.
All right, so here's another option for you guys. Is if you get a partner license and create a partner community so you can share accounts, contacts, and opportunities. Okay, that's one way to go to bring them on board. But I'm dead serious. You'll spend a ton of money trying to do an integration with Excel and bring it in on a regular basis.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for your help. And then one more question on that. On the Who ID, did you mean the contact ID that you were
linking to? It's either the contact
to?
ID or the lead ID that you want to relate that activity to.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Deepa. All right. No questions in the chat or hands raised. Who else has a question? Or how can we help? Squire, go ahead.
All right. The next one is there a way to get a dev org of a nonprofit instance? Meaning not from an existing one, but like my own dev org to kind of learn my way through a nonprofit instance?
So the way you would work that is, since you're not allowed to open a support case in a new dev org anymore, if you have a corporate org, what you can do is you can get a brand new dev org from developerforce.com and then copy that company org ID and then open a support case and say I want a nonprofit starter pack installed in that dev org. Although, have you tried going to the AppExchange and downloading the nonprofit starter pack?
No, I mean I've been asked kind of outside of my current role to try to help an NPO starting up, and I don't have any experience with an NPO package, so I wasn't sure the best way to
I believe you can actually download the nonprofit starter pack into your dev org from the AppExchange.
Okay, so just
give that a try.
Get my normal dev and just try to install it.
Yeah, give that a try.
Okay.
I believe you can.
Okay, thank you.
Be careful. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Deepa.
By the way, Deepa, you were great on Button Click Admin this past week.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I was honored to be on it. That was great. Thank you.
You bet. It's a fun podcast, so it was great to hear a voice that we recognize. So.
Oh, thanks.
All right. We have Alan. You had a question on looks like a knowledge article.
Yeah, it's referencing collaborative forecasting. If anyone uses that.
We use collaborative forecasting. What's the question?
Well, basically, when if you think about the forecast hierarchy, when you have people reporting to you, basically you cannot see the total. Well, you can see it, but it's in the wrong light item of the total of the opportunities for the manager.
Yep, and guess what? When Spring 15,
yeah,
they're fixing some of that. I was just reading the release notes, and they're going to allow everybody to be able to override their forecast, and I think that's going to fix that, not being able to see the manager's total. What I would do also is ask a question, read the release notes and see if that is solving your problem. But I believe what the other thing I would do is post a question on the forecasting group on the Success community. Because both like Mike Way, Robin Grochol, and who's the third person? There's 3 PMs that are on there. They'll be able to help you answer your question. And just say, you know what, I know in Spring 15 everybody will be able to override their forecast. Will that fix the not being able to see the manager's forecast themselves? What happens right now is the manager's numbers are bundled with the people that are reporting to them. You don't see the manager's individual total. That's your problem, right?
Well, you actually see it on the quota column for the month. You see that manager's total, but the rest of the columns closed and commit, in best case, are the summary of everyone's opportunities in those stages. The only thing I thought of to fix it myself would be to make the manager's quota a summary of their people plus theirs, but then that would inflate their quota amount.
Yeah.
Total quota amounts.
Yeah, no, I think they're fixing that in Spring 15.
Excellent. Thank you.
Look at the release notes, and then if that still doesn't answer your question, post a message on the forecasting group on the Success community.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Deepa. All right. Who else has a question? Ashley, go ahead.
All right, thanks. Hey, I was just wondering, from your guys' experience, if you ever ran into similar like situation of mine in which you kind of came into an org that was already kind of configured, although, you know, from your experience and your own expertise, it wasn't really set up the best way to meet the business needs. And now the organization wants to, you know, utilize Salesforce more, but it really wasn't really set up correctly. So now you're trying to introduce new fields and new objects in which the business could really utilize, but the way the structure was set up might not have been the best way. I was just wondering if anyone ran into that issue, or maybe some best practices, best guidelines.
Yeah, this is Brian. I've run into this issue a lot of times. The big one was at the previous job I had. I inherited an org that had historically had two different admins and went through merging two different orgs prior to me joining. And so lots of things were, we'll just say, suboptimal. And it's not an easy thing to it's not an easy thing to change. So you kind of have to go through and pick your battles and create a priority list. You know, where are the biggest pain points? You know, there are some things that they're suboptimal created because they weren't following best practices, but it works for right now. And there are things like they were set up, it made sense maybe when they set it up, but it's not going to be scalable for your business as it grows and as you add more people. So the way you have to handle it is by identifying those pain points first that are more scalability issues, or issues that prevent you from getting the information out that you need to run the business now, and make out a list and start prioritizing what it will take to put it into the more optimal priority. And I'll warn you, not every company is willing to take the time to say, you know, we're basically going to go and rip the Band-Aid off and do what we should have done to begin with. Even I, at my last company, there were some things that were just horrendously suboptimal, but they were so ingrained across the business, there was no way that I could actually change it without years of effort. And so just create a list, you know, so like one of the things I did is I had a whiteboard at my desk, and every time I found something, I'm like, well, why did we do this way, or that makes no sense? I would just write it on the board, and that would keep up my list. And then I made arrangements with folks to say, you know, we're going to either, if it's something's a major problem that, hey, we need to get this fixed now in order for us to do our business, that comes first. And then everything else you kind of dictate, say, you know, we want to spend X% of our time working on the new stuff that we need, and Y% of the time working on cleaning things up so we can move forward better. And it really depends on what that collection, that list of stuff you create. If you have a whole bunch of things that are just really far below suboptimal, you're almost better off to saying, okay, we're going to pull off the Band-Aid right now. We're just going to redo all this stuff, and this is what the end result looks like. But you have to know where you're going to go to, and you have to be able to explain to all your management why it's worth spending X many days or weeks to get to that end result, and the pain that may involve from any data migration and retraining and all that stuff, because you will have a difficult time selling it unless you can really crystal clear see why it's beneficial to the company to do it.
Great.
Everybody wants to jump in on this one.
We have a lot of experience in this. This is Jackie, and as an independent contractor who works with small businesses and startup businesses who generally self-implement to begin with, and then get themselves in a situation where they don't know how to either recover from what they did or didn't know the right questions to ask. That's one of the things that I end up doing often. So my biggest tips to you, besides what was already stated, is move with caution when you want to make changes. Understand, let's say something as simple as deleting fields. I always move with caution. If there's a field that's going to be removed from a page layout and all of the higher-ups say, well, we don't need this, we don't need the data anymore. Do not just delete that information, remove it from the page layout. mark the field with an X so that you know that this is kind of in kind of a holding pattern. Make sure that none of your end users come back to you in 2 or 3 weeks to say, I needed that data, where did it go? Because then you can just easily put it back on the page layout, and we haven't caused too much damage and can recover from that quickly. The same with if you're doing data scrubbing and you've determined that X number of leads can be removed because they're old, they're stale, nobody's working them, what have you. Don't just delete those, move them into a kind of a holding pool and make sure that there's not any backlash from those kind of being semi-removed or made invisible to your end users. That way if someone comes back to you and says, well, where did this lead go, you can quickly restore that just by transferring it back to the end user. Same with tasks and all of that kind of stuff. And I speak from experience. When I first started using Salesforce, I had a supervisor who said, we're going to get rid of all of this data. And I didn't know at the time that I should put that in kind of a holding pattern. Well, the sales organization immediately, within 20 minutes, we created a firestorm. So that's a hard lesson that I learned, and that will never obviously happen again. But that would be 2 of my biggest recommendations for you. The third is before you remove things, make sure you understand what else they may be connected to, other third-party apps, other apps within your organization. Are they connected to an ERP system or some sort of homegrown pricing system where if you delete those or make any changes to those fields, it's going to render those other applications inoperable, because you certainly don't want that either. Those are my 3 recommendations.
I want to add one more thing to, and who was that? I didn't recognize your voice.
The person asking the question?
Yeah, no, you.
Oh, me. This is Jackie. Jackie.
Oh, hi, Jackie.
Hey.
Hi. I didn't recognize your voice, Jackie. I want to add one more thing to that, because this is what we do all the time, right? Like when we get brought in, we're taking over instances where people have done so much bad work, or not necessarily bad work, but, there are times when, unfortunately, when you have homegrown admins and have never really been through doing an ERD or a data modeling on what that the structure should look like based on the business process that's, for that business. One of the things we do is we recommend them that they actually bring in a product like Panaya Change Guru so that you can see visually, if you're going to change a field or delete a field, what all is going to get impacted. Is it embedded in Apex? Is it embedded in a Visualforce? How many reports is it being embedded in? So the first thing you really have to do is do an analysis on, okay, if I redesign the structure and these are the fields that are going to be affected, where are all those fields embedded? And kind of document, saying, okay, it's not just the data like Jackie talked about, but it's also like what else is going to be the impact if we change this field or delete this field or any of that. And from an admin perspective, management perspective, when you take a field off the page layout, what we do is we insert in the label of the field. In the label of the field, we insert an inverted triangle character, because you can't change the API name. If you change the API name, the system is going to blow up on you. But what we do is we put a label on that with an inverted black triangle, and what that does is it takes all those fields and puts them at the bottom of the list, so you can see which are the fields that you're going to deprecate, which is what we call deprecate. And then once we've dealt with all those fields and they've gone out of every place where it was going to be impacted, then we go delete it. And before we delete that, we do an absolute backup, like do a backup, making sure all the data is down in Excel spreadsheets, and then go delete that. So you do have to do an analysis, and there's a couple tools. One is like Panaya Change Guru will give you an idea on where the fields are embedded, and then Field Trip is another free product on the AppExchange, which is not completely listed. Now you have to do a Google search and get to it. That'll give you an analysis of the utilization percentage of how often was that field populated in those objects. And that's another thing that we do with analysis is like, okay, these fields were used 1% of the time. Do we really need it or not? Do you know? Because when you remap your process, your Salesforce with your business process, you might find fields that are not being utilized. And how do you do that analysis? And Field Trip gives you that.
Thanks. What was the first one that you said before Field Trip?
It was Panaya Change Guru.
Okay.
They are on the App Exchange. It's a paid product. It's not a free product. But you will be so happy when you get that, because it's gonna when you do an you do have to do field by field analysis, but they'll give you reports, and they highlight when it's a critical problem, and it'll be in red and say, be careful not to delete this because it has like 75%, problem rate where if you all the different areas where it's embedded, and it's amazing. You'll find fields that are being embedded in 100 different or 200 different reports.
Mhm.
And you also have to think about report cleanup. It's like whatever you do, how is that going to impact on the existing reports that you have?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is Steve. Just want to echo like what Jackie and Deepa said, and also, depending on what your budget is, there's some stuff you can do. If you don't have access to like a paid app, or if you want to get started before you can deploy a paid app, you can utilize things. Like Field Trip is a great one and it's free. Some stuff that's native in Salesforce. You can use tools like the Schema Builder to just get a quick look at the relationship between multiple objects and the fields that connect those objects together, and the master detail relationships, to kind of acquaint yourself with how the data interacts with each other and how it's connected, and what the implications will be if I delete that object because it does running a couple of reports, it just doesn't look that important. There's not a lot of data in there. Then you find out, looking at the Schema Builder, this thing plays a key role in this connection to that connection that's used down the road. And as Jackie said, delete is the last resort. And before that, we typically move very incrementally. We'll remove stuff from the page layout first, and to that end, I usually clone the existing page layout so I have a preserved copy of the original that everybody is used to looking at and seeing, so that if we ever have to do any kind of restore or rollback, we have the original page layout. And then working off the clone, I'll remove the unneeded fields from that, and then the next step is renaming them, and then archiving them, and then finally, I think it's actually the step in Salesforce is called erasing. That's when you finally you're removing that field completely from the org and all the data that goes with it. And which edition are you on, by the way? You on Enterprise?
I'm on Enterprise, yeah.
Oh, cool. So you have and so if you're not scheduling weekly backups right now, do it. Do it every week and download them religiously. Create a report on reports and look for reports that haven't been run in a certain time frame, like last 180 days, last 365 days. But the same rules apply. Before you delete them, move them into a folder, like an obsolete folder or something like that, and communicate to your users too. Like what I did is I identified reports that haven't been run in the last 180, 365 days, but some of those reports, they only get run once a year. They only get run twice a year. So I sent out an email to the people that own those reports or last ran them, and a few people said, you know what, I know I haven't run it in a while, but I do really need that. Okay, I pulled it from the cull list. Stuff like that. And another thing I would caution you, be careful how you ask Because the other thing is, if you tell people that you're thinking of getting rid of something, even if they don't use it, if they're like a hoarder, if they have that hoarder mentality, if you ask them, they'll tell you that they need everything. And so they'll give you bad information. They'll make you think that, I can't get rid of that. I can't change that because they need it when they really don't. So there's some subtle ways that I've learned. Like I remember when we were trying to, we ran out of licenses and we looked at some like people who hadn't logged in a while, and we're going to like flip their license, deactivate their license, and free it up to assign to some new users. Well, you send an email. No. Everybody needs their license. Everybody needs their license, and everybody logs in the next day. But then they don't log in again for the next 6 months. So so you got to be kind of like a little bit stealthy sometimes. You got to kind of like maybe not ask. Maybe just kind of be like, okay, I'm not going to get rid of this, but I'm going to remove it from the page and see if anybody notices. I'm gonna remove those reports. I'm gonna move them into this other folder and see if anybody chirps up. Or this person hasn't logged in 6 months. Let me deactivate their license and see if they say anything. It's this juggling act. I mean, you got to be proactive. Also, you have to be a little bit stealthy at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. I just found out about the schema builder, so I took a look at that. It's really
that is going to be just like if you're new to the data and the metadata and the way things, it's a really nice way to acquaint yourself.
Yes, exactly. Great. Thanks, everyone.
I have one more quick suggestion. I will be quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Kind of goes with, at the very beginning we were saying try to get your management to go along with letting you take the time to do this. And believe me, 9 times out of 10, if you go into there and you say, look, we need 2 to 3 weeks to shut down so we can clean everything up, you will be shut down. So in my experience, the best thing to do is negotiate and see if you can get like 1 day every 2 weeks. Just say, I need like every other Friday, I need to just be able to, and that's a lot easier to negotiate. That would be my suggestion.
Oh, okay, great.
And one more thing on that, if you do get that permission to shut down, make sure you go into the security settings and lock everybody out with login hours. So, because there will always be someone who will be like, I don't care, I was told no, I'm still going to go in and log in and do whatever I want to do. So if you're going to get approval for that, make sure you go in and you lock every profile out until you're done with the work you're doing, and then give them permission to come back in and log in.
Well, and usually you don't have to lock everybody out. Usually you can get what you need done just fine, even if you kind of have to and then push it to active at the end of the day after everybody leaves. That's usually what I do. I try not to lock everybody out because our business is far too dependent on it.
Well, it depends on your business, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on what you're doing, though. It depends on what you're doing also.
And don't forget, you've got a sandbox as your play area so that you can, refresh your sandbox and then do what you need to do in there and make sure that everything works the way you anticipate it, because you may find there are things that you didn't know about until you actually take a step and do it. So do it in Sandbox first, and then you can use, change sets to push it over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, however you need to replicate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, all. Appreciate everyone chiming in there. All right. We got about 12 minutes left. Who else has a question? A lot of good resources on the call.
I have another question, but I don't want to take up anyone else's
question.
Oh,
fine. Go ahead.
Hey, speaking of Sandbox, I was just wondering if everyone had, the partial or the full Sandbox. As in our org, we have about 70 users, and it's like I said before, it was it was kind of started 4 years ago, and now we're starting to get the hang of it and starting to use it for more of our business needs and introduce more and more things. So just seeing if you guys had any recommendations. We have the free sandbox here, but you have to kind of import a lot of your data in fields and such. So just seeing if anyone had any suggestions between the partial or the full sandbox.
This is Steve. We're on Enterprise, been on Enterprise since 2003, and we've actually got a couple of different orgs here. And the org that I'm the primary admin on, we just use the free developer one because we don't do a lot of heavy integration or anything like that. We've got another business unit that's also on Enterprise. They do heavy integration, and so they need the full sandbox. But we've pretty much always been able to get along with just the free developer one. Again, it comes down to need plus, unfortunately, budget. I mean, I forget what the pricing is now on a full sandbox, but that was also kind of cost. It was cost prohibitive for us, and we couldn't really we just didn't really have the need to justify that kind of expense. It's like we would rather spend that money on more licenses than a sandbox. And I think they recently, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but didn't they recently bump up the storage on even the free developer sandbox? I know that one time, I think it was my first time trying to do any kind of large-scale testing, I loaded in a couple of thousand accounts or something like that, not a ton of data, and I blew past the limit for the sandbox. But that was years and years and years ago, and I think that since then, they've really bumped up the storage capacity, or maybe it's the developer org that they've bumped the storage capacity up on.
You're right, Steve. They bumped it up last release, I think. They bumped up pretty much all the sandboxes across the board.
So I mean, it doesn't alleviate the manual task of extracting the data from your production environment to use in your sandbox for testing, but you've got a lot more room there to do more large-scale testing than you used to do.
I'm a big fan of the full copy sandbox, but it's tough to. I can't remember the price that we got quoted from Salesforce when we're on Enterprise only was just jaw-dropping. And so you have to have a really good reason to want it. If you're doing any code whatsoever, I recommend having a full copy sandbox. If you're doing a lot of configuration where you have multiple people configuring, I like having a full copy sandbox for two reasons. One is you treat it as the QA portal. So essentially you know that you have a copy of all the data, so including all the weird, bizarre types of exceptions that you may have in your data scheme, and you have that to play around with when you're making configuration or code changes or whatever it may be. You find out in there instead of when you deploy to production, because you're not going to be able to take everything that's in your enterprise production org and put it into your sandbox, even with the increase in size. There's just not going to be enough space, let alone the fact that every time you refresh, you're going to have to pull it in and have to create all the child records off it. It's just a general pain in the backside. The second reason why I like the full copy sandbox is from a training perspective. If you have a lot of new people coming on, you can give them access to the full copy sandbox before they get access to production. And then they can see exactly how everything is set up with real life data, and you don't have to worry about them screwing something up because, hey, it's a sandbox. It's a nice kind of avenue to it. I mean, you can do those types of functionalities with the developer org, but you have to create that data yourself, and that does take a good chunk of time, especially if you're trying to do a good representation of all the data that you may have in the system.
Yeah. Thank you. Did I think one of my Salesforce admin friends said that he uses his sandbox and he finalizes everything in the sandbox and then he can push it into production. Do you know if that's on all different levels of the sandbox or only the full?
You could do that across all the sandbox. So, for example, when I was working at Health Grades, we did a lot of development. So we would have our production org, our full copy org, and then I had something like 3 or 4 developer orgs. And the process is you do something in development, and then you can create, use the change set system, or you can use the IDE or Ant, or there's a couple different other ways. And you can move the setup that you did in development into your full copy sandbox. Do your testing there, and then push it into production. So you can. So there are ways to do it. As a matter of fact, you can actually set up so you can move data from production, or not data, but you can move configuration from your production into a sandbox without having to do a full refresh if you had to.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
And you can even go old school and create a package.
You're going to like overwhelm her now.
Now I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't worry about that. Ignore that comment.
I'm showing my age now. I remember S controls.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes. 5 minutes left. Any other questions?
Someone was saying something. What were you saying?
Guess not. All right. Awesome. Well, if nobody else has any questions, we will.
It's noon already?
Yeah, well, 4 minutes shy.
3 o'clock here. I come from the future.
I was going to say it's 3 o'clock here.
Well, why didn't you tell me I was about to spill that water then, Steve? I mean, come on.
I'm so glad this call is starting out so great. This is a great start to the new year with MVP Office Hours, where we're all happy, smiling.
That's right. Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks MVPs for helping out, and everyone have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.